and welcome back to the In Publishing podcast after our summer break. Our guest today is Jo Adams, Marketing Director at The New Scientist. We would like to thank our podcast sponsor, Acorn Web Offset, the Yorkshire-based specialist A5 and A4 magazine printer. With high-speed web offset and sheet-fed printing, together with in-house saddle stitching, perfect binding and mailing services, Acorn can cope with the most demanding of production turnarounds. Acorn prides itself on its efficiency and low-cost print production. For more information, visit acornweb.co.uk. Jo Adams has been the Marketing Director of The New Scientist for the past 2 years. At this year's PPA Awards, her team was named Team of the Year, and the judges praised them for their cross-brand collaborations, fresh new campaigns and key data insights, leading to an impressive subscription turnover. Jo, welcome to the In Publishing podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Can we begin by asking you to talk us through your career to date and then your current role and responsibilities?
Yes, so I have worked in subscriptions marketing for 21 years now. I started my career at the BBC and I was there for 7 years. I started as a subscriptions assistant and it was a stopgap role for me initially. I wanted to move on to a graduate plan within retail. However, I was hooked as soon as I joined BBC. Apart from being a fantastic company, I also really enjoyed subscriptions marketing, largely an analytical side. And I stayed there for 7 years. After BBC, I moved to Hearst and did a couple of years there. Then I moved on to TSL Education, so it was quite different from moving to multi-brands to just one or two. I was there for a few years and then moved on to Bauer, and I had lots of brands at Bauer. By the time I left after 4 years, there was 70 brands that I was looking after.
Wow.
And then I did a small few months consultation with The Spectator, and then from there I've moved on to New Scientist. So I have worked for a number of publishers and lots of wonderful brands. And now I'm at New Scientist. I am part of the senior leadership team there, and I am responsible for all marketing at New Scientist, which is quite different for me, as most of my career has been spent just focused on subscription. But now I'm responsible for brand marketing and also the other products that we have. So events, tours, holidays, and we've recently launched a shop. So I am lucky that I've continued to learn over my 21 years.
Well, can I just take you back and ask what have been the key learnings you've taken away from some of the other publishers you worked for before The New Scientist?
Well, subscriptions within the other publishers, it's varied in terms of level of importance and so forth, interest and support. Largely, I've been lucky to work for some really inspiring people. Their common denominator has been data-driven insight. And this is something that's stuck with me throughout my career. You're constantly asking questions, striving to find the answer in a complex world. The kind of key thing for me is lifetime value. That's something that's evolved over years. In my first role at the BBC, I was working with an American lady who talked about lifetime value all the time because the States was always much further ahead than the UK in subscriptions. And so lifetime value is something that has stuck with me, as well as data-driven insight.
Great. And you've worked for, as you say, multi-title publishers. 70 brands is a lot at Bauer, and now you're with a single title publisher. In terms of how you do your job, how do they compare?
Well, the challenge remains the same. You have a lot of plates that you have to keep spinning. You're balancing revenue, yield, and volume. What I found with multi-title particularly is it's challenging around generally not having enough people when you have so many brands. So you have to compromise. So there tends to be, with multi-brands, conflicting priorities. So they're not always focused on subscriptions. And so you may see the opportunity that you could grow a publication, but they're not necessarily interested in growing volume because the focus is on yield, for example, and there are no advertising benefits from having, big subscription bases. And then you'll
Right.
have other brands where you need the volume, because that's what drives the advertising revenues. And so it's making sure that you give the right to focus, and have the right strategy for each of those brands. But the challenges are the same. You are balancing the volume, the yield, and the revenue across all of the brands that you work for.
Yeah. Okay. So coming to the New Scientist, how important are subscriptions, and how has subscription marketing evolved over the last 2 decades, and where are you today?
Well, subscriptions is the largest revenue generator for the business, so it's a main focus for us. 75% of the revenue comes as customer revenue. So it's really, really important. And everyone in the business knows our subscription KPIs. We share them across the business. I think over the past 2 decades, newsstands used to be king, and we know that that channel has been declining for a number of years. And so subscription teams have had to expand their marketing expertise. And we now, subscription marketers, are analysts and they are channel experts. There has been a decline in kind of the generalist role, and there is much more emphasis on understanding the analytics that drive your conversion. So I think it's a
Right.
very, very different breed that's evolved over the last two decades. And digital marketing is our number one channel, followed very closely by email. So you have
Right.
to understand the data, and first party data, to make sure that you are maximising the opportunities, and conversion.
Well, this question might be covering the same territory, but this year your team won Team of the Year at the PPA Awards. What specific things contributed to your winning formula?
So I kind of put this down to expert file management, the data-driven insight, and a test and learn mentality. We are very focused on strategic priorities, and we have 3 main strategic priorities at the moment, which is driving up yield, reducing churn, and then customer experience. So analysis is
Right.
the beating heart of the marketing department. We have KPIs for everything we do, and we monitor the data and we act upon what the data is telling us. So that's why just analytics is so important for my department. It's the beating heart.
Right. And are there campaigns that particularly stand out for you from the last year? You've mentioned email. What has worked best?
So what really stands out for me this year is the agility and the response to the COVID situation.
Right.
We set out obviously in very unprecedented times, where we were in the middle of a pandemic, and how you respond to that, making sure that your customers are able to access your content, meant that we were changing on a daily basis. And we stepped up our campaign marketing around COVID, in that you trust the data, you trust the science, and we are the publication that you should be reading. We were lucky enough to be offered a slot on the daily briefing with Matt Hancock. And
Right.
Matt Hancock handed us a ready-made marketing campaign when he said that he knew he would get tough questions from the New Scientist. So the briefing was around
Great.
5-6 o'clock at night. So we jumped on that. And the following day, we launched our Tough Questions campaign. And we took the cut of the briefing, we embedded it into our email marketing and our online marketing, and we pushed that out. So being agile within a very difficult time, I think we've really had quite an outstanding performance from the marketing team during the pandemic.
And can I ask a bit more about your approach to COVID-related news? Am I right in thinking that you have made the sort of basic COVID news free? And has interest in the science behind the pandemic conversely been good for business?
Yes. I would say that our coverage has been the best in the UK. We have given the news-related content for free, but more in-depth pieces are behind the paywall, and that has served us really well during the pandemic. Our new subscriptions are up 32% year on target, and we have not followed a trial strategy as such. We've maintained our pricing, and in fact, in some cases, we've increased our prices. So we really believe in the content that we are producing, and that people will pay for it. And that has been, proven with the fact that we are 32% up on our new subscriptions target.
I was going to ask, you operate a hard paywall on the New Scientist website. Can you talk us through the logic of that?
It's nothing kind of spectacular, really. It's more that we believe in our content and that people will pay for it, and that is proven. So the hard paywall was introduced, I think it was towards just before my time, towards the end of 2017. And whilst when we first put the paywall up, we did see a small drop in conversion. But as our marketing has matured, and we are using content marketing more and more, we have seen that people will pay for our content. So we have no plans to change the hard paywall, although we are looking to evolve a more flexible paywall as we start to drive and grow internationally. So what's right for the UK as such is not necessarily right for the US market. We don't have the same brand awareness in the US, and so we are looking to introduce more flexibility overseas. But the logic is, we believe in our content and that people will pay for it.
Have you learnt any lessons from COVID? Has giving the news aspect for free then encouraged readers to pay for the more in-depth content? And is that a lesson you might take away?
Yes, absolutely. It seems to be that the UK appetite for COVID-related news is insatiable. We have a significant increase in traffic to our COVID pages, and we are still continuing to see high conversion rates against the content, certainly within the UK. And so as we evolve our content marketing, we are looking at more analysis into the other content areas that we cover, and then creating more personalized journeys, introducing more content to our readers, not just through email, but also on the site.
And your pricing is set to encourage consumers to take up the print and digital bundle, I think. Is that right?
Yes, so with the COVID pandemic, we took the decision to remove print only from our offering. So we gave all of our legacy print subscribers access to the digital content, so they could access the app as well as the website. And we stopped selling the print because we were really concerned about delivery. And so we have recently run some analysis to see whether or not the removal of print only has impacted our overall conversion, and whether or not we have pushed people to take digital subscriptions. And actually, it's the opposite. We've had a significant increase in people taking bundles. So print is still very, very important to our readers. They like the print, but they're happy to pay for the bundle subscription.
Right. And for other publishers considering setting up a paywall, what are the key do's and don'ts from your perspective?
You have to understand what your customers are reading. You set the paywall accordingly. So if you use the data to ascertain the best paywall for you, and it might be that you need a flexible paywall, it might be that it's just a soft registration. It depends on your bounce rates. If you have a lot of traffic, but they are only reading one article before they bounce, then having a hard paywall or a metered access set at 3 articles means it's doomed to fail from the beginning. So you need to understand the data and then set it accordingly. But the most important thing is to test and learn. You have to adapt and continually evolve the strategy, because as we have seen, what works for the UK may not necessarily work for the US or Europe. So you have to be able to be very flexible and adapt your approach where it's needed.
And can you talk a bit more about the analytics? You've mentioned them and the PPA judges praised your team for your key data insights. Can you talk a bit more about what those metrics are and how you use them?
We have lots of data that we monitor. So all roads for us lead to the website. So we continually monitor the funnel. So who's coming into the top of the funnel from the different regions, the content that they're reading, whether they're reading free content, how many people are hitting the barrier, the articles that are converting. This is all on a weekly basis. We have a dashboard where we know exactly what is converting.
Yeah.
We have channel targets as well. So the emails that we send out, we have newsletters as well as campaign marketing. So we monitor them as well. And the KPIs for those are the kind of obvious in terms of open rates, click-through rates, and then conversion.
Yeah.
We have retention analytics. We have been lucky to work with a company called Foresight, who have built some incredible reports for us monitoring our retention, and we're able to monitor regions, packages, payment methods, and tenure. And we
Yeah.
use this analysis on a regular basis to feed our strategic priorities. So, for
Yeah.
example, we built a subscription bridge, and the subscription bridge looks at how many subscriptions did we have at the beginning of the year? How many customers have we generated that are new? How many of those have churned based on 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year? And how many subscriptions do we have at the end of the year? So we know that year one churn is quite high. And so that is a strategic priority for us, which is linked to customer engagement. So if we can reduce our churn by 10%, that would net us a good couple of thousand more on our file. So that is something that we are focusing on how do we improve engagement and how do we reduce churn. And there are so many variables that we monitor, but largely the traffic to the site and the conversion, and then how they churn over time, and interventions that we can introduce to increase customer engagement, and then therefore in turn improve retention rates.
And can you mention any of those strategies?
So onboarding is something that we are working on at the moment, and we have introduced a 7-effort onboarding campaign for our new subscribers. And that is a mix of welcome pack, which is a physical pack that's delivered to customers that tells them all about what the new scientist has to offer on top of the already wonderful content. We have puzzles, podcasts, events, holidays, shop, and we introduce our customers to all of the things that the new scientist offers. We send email communications, which are then based around the content. We give them surprise and delight, where we will give them a discount, 10% voucher code to buy something from the shop. And we are just about to launch subscriber-only events as well. And we also use push notifications to let people know that there are issues on their way. And that's just some of the things that we introduced from April.
Right. So a lot of stuff. What is the division of time, do you think, between your team's focus on subscription renewal and new acquisitions?
It's 50-50. So
Right.
I have
Right.
a head of customer experience who is the voice of the subscriber. And then we have a head of campaign marketing who is focused on our acquisition marketing. But the three of us work very closely, and retention or customer experience knows exactly what's happening with acquisition, and acquisition know exactly how customers are being retained. And so there is a balancing act between new subscribers, how many of those are trial, how many of them are full paid, the packages that they're taking, so that we do not generate too many new subscriptions that have a high propensity to churn. So we work
Right.
very, very closely as a team, and it's an equal split.
Right. You've mentioned events. How have they been impacted by COVID? But it sounds like you're optimistic for the future. How do you see events taking place in the future?
Yeah, so it's really sad actually, the events industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really, really sad. We have an amazing show that happens once a year. It's a 4-day festival of science. We've had over 40,000 people visit the event over the last couple of years. And it's, as you know, we're not able to do that this year. We've postponed it until next year. And we also launched this year a number of one-day events and evening lectures. And they were really well received at the beginning of the year. And so, of course, we can no longer do them. So during the pandemic, we tested a virtual event, which was off the back of one of our instant experts. And they have been really well received. So the first one we did for free, and that was just to test the platform. And
Yeah.
then we are now running paid for events, and we have 2 or 3 a month. And we have got a global audience, and it is working really well. So we just see that these will evolve over time, and we will continue to do virtual events. But what we are also exploring is weekend events. So where you can have a mini break which is linked to a subject. And that's something that we are working on now. We haven't launched them yet, but we are just gauging appetite, so people can register their interest in the weekenders, as we're calling them.
And will those be virtual or will they be physical events?
They will be physical.
Right. Okay. Um, so you're optimistic that that's going to be possible again going
Yes.
forward? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Good.
do. I mean, it will be into next year, and I think the work that we have done with the virtual events means that we can monetize virtual events. And so I do believe that there will be a mix. We will continue with virtual events, but we will also have a number of slightly different physical events in the future.
Right. You said recently that your team plays an active part in product development within the company, and you've just touched on that in talking about events. Um, I wondered if you could tell me a bit more about that and how you work with product development. And do you think that's unusual for the marketing team to be involved in that way?
Yes, I mean, certainly in my experience, I found that people in subscriptions tend to have a seat at the table, but not always a voice. Um, and what's very different in New Scientists is that we have a very innovative leadership team, and we talk constantly about future strategies. So we try not to be too involved in the operational side of things, although that does take up some of our time. But we do spend a lot of time talking about the future, and constantly evolving. So we have a strategic pyramid of which the customer sits at the top of the pyramid, and marketing is the voice of the customer. And so everything we do, there is a marketing voice there, just checking in to make sure that all of the initiatives that are being considered around the business have the customer at the top of their pyramid. And that's really unusual. I think there's only one other company that I am aware of that has a chair for the customer in their meetings, and I think that's News International.
Right.
I've They have a chair which is, it might be an empty chair, but it is the customer that sits in the room when they're making decisions. And we as marketing team are the voice of the customer. And so that's why we are always included in the conversations around product development. And so it is quite unusual.
Great. Great. What about social media? How important is that to subscriber acquisition?
Social media for us is one of our largest prospecting channels. Um, So what I mean by that is that we run a lot of social media activity around Facebook on lookalike audiences. And this is the only place where we really offer trial subscriptions. We work with a fantastic agency called Rocket Mill. And they've worked with me now through Bauer through to New Scientist, and they're probably one of the best agencies that I've ever worked with. They give us strategic advice and they help us evolve the digital marketing for our business, but it's our top channel. We spend quite a lot of our budget on search marketing as well. But social media is more around the prospecting, introducing customers to the content, and then taking them on the journey to become paid for customers.
And what do you mean by lookalike?
So you have customers now who are purchasing your subscriptions, and so you can take your data and you can load that into Facebook, and it will give you a number of lookalikes. So that's
Right.
people who may have shown an interest in science content, they may have visited your site once, they may be of the same age demographic or in the same region or state in America, for example. And then they create a lookalike audience of which you then share the sponsored ads with them.
Right, right. Have you had much experience of artificial intelligence, and how do you see that evolving?
So AI is an interesting one. I would say it's limited in an automated sense because we don't necessarily have the systems that allow us to be automated and the machines take over as such. However, it is something that we are talking about internally, and certainly where we see the marketing evolve. Because we've got a lot of complex data that at the moment we kind of have to churn through and interrogate to come up with answers. I believe that humans still need to ask the right questions. I'm not sure the machines ask the right questions. But for us to be able to effectively manage the churn and the complex data and then make decisions, I think as we move into a more mature um, uh, marketing department over time, where automation and personalization becomes the beating heart, then that's certainly, I think, the future for my marketing team, but also our business.
Yeah, yeah. And you've mentioned the shop. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yes, so we launched the New Scientist shop. Um, I think it may have been towards the end of last year. And this was born out of an interest in customers wanting to purchase back issues and the collection. We have a bookazines called The Collection.
Yeah,
And there was interest in purchasing those. Also, at our live events, we set up a mini shop where we sell our books, and then we had things like, mugs and cups and t-shirts, etc.
yeah,
And they have a tendency to do really well. So rather than only sell products and merchandise at the shops, we just thought, well, we would try this shop. And it's actually working really well for us. Books and bookazines are the biggest revenue generator for us. And I'm not talking groundbreaking revenue here,
yeah.
but it's still an additional revenue stream that we didn't have this time last year. Um, and we are branching out to look at alternatives. I mean, we've tried branded chili bottles and mugs, etc., that have not necessarily been as well received as the content. Our customers tend to just really like our content and want more of it. But we are starting to explore things like subscription boxes as well. And so I think that will just be something that will evolve even more over time.
Great, Great. So where next for your team, your subscriptions and marketing team?
Automation and personalization. Those are the strategic priorities for us moving forward. Growing first-party data, and for us to make sure that we give our customers the experience that they deserve, and surfacing more content that they are interested in, means that we have to get better at the personalization and automation. So that means that the data and the platforms that we are using need to evolve. So that is definitely a key focus for us. And we will continue to develop and test new MPD and international growth. I think we've done a very good job in the UK, and now we need to turn our focus to international growth. So we have just embarked on a test plan in the US, where we've launched 2 days ago. We launched a prospecting campaign, digital prospecting campaign, and that will run for 3 months, and we will test and learn over the next 3 months with a view to roll out in October. And then we are just starting to explore our rest of world territory. We have a lot of traffic that comes from overseas. 45% of our traffic is from the US. So we need to do a better job of converting that traffic. And by that, we need to grow brand awareness there.
And how are you planning to do that? Do you have a US office at the moment? What are your thoughts on that?
So we have US reporters, and we have a US edition. A couple of things that we're doing, first of all, is just testing the digital campaign to see if we can improve the brand awareness. We are also looking to research our lapsed customers and our existing US customers to understand whether there's an appetite for more localized content. And if there is, then we will look to expand and produce more localized content within our US edition. We have an Australian edition as well, so the same goes hand in hand there. So those are the kind of the key things at the moment, is that understanding, asking questions, and then using that learning to develop the product.
Great. Finally, what magazine, apart from The New Scientist, do you read for pleasure? What do you most like about it? And how do you read it, print or digital?
So my guilty pleasure is actually the Sunday Times.
Okay.
So it's not so much a magazine. I do dip in and out of The Economist and The Spectator. It's a timing issue more so with them. There's a lot of content to consume, and I find that I can never get through, a copy. But I do have print copy delivered. But my real guilty pleasure is the Sunday Times. It's a Sunday morning read. I think it's generally well written, and I think that I always think I'm never going to get through the entire broadsheet, when actually there's always something really interesting to grab me on the next page. And so I just really, really like the paper. And I read the print because I enjoy the lean back experience. There's so much noise digitally. My inbox is constantly pinging with various newsletters, and I just like the peace and quiet of a Sunday morning read. And that's my guilty pleasure.
Great. Jo Adams, thank you very much for being our guest on the In Publishing podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
A big thank you again to Acorn Web Offset for sponsoring this podcast. If you're looking for a new magazine printer, then check out their website at acornweb.co.uk or contact Matt Carey on 07714 299 105 or by email at matthew.carey@acornweb.co.uk. Thank you to Jo for being our guest this week. You can find out more about New Scientist at their website, newscientist.com. Last year, we published a specialist guide on renewal strategies for publishers, written by Julian Thorne. For more information, check out the guide section at inpublishing.co.uk. If you'd like to get in touch with us, then email editorial@inpublishing.co.uk. Thank you for listening, and please join me next week on the In Publishing podcast.